Pregame.com.
Steelers at Denver, round one of the NFL playoffs. All right, so I think the key conversation of this game is the Steelers' injuries / players who are not able to, Ryan Clark specifically. Yeah. So let's start off. Ryan Clark, in my opinion, is the most underrated Steeler on either side of the ball currently. Agree or disagree?
I agree with you. He's having by far his best season, I think, without question.
And I'm not sure about that. I think he's been this good the last couple years. I think for whatever reason there's more conversation about it. But either way, elite season, and especially he's a rare guy. And that's the thing about the Steelers. When they had the amazing defense against the rush, they had both a great line, great linebackers, and great tackling D-backs. Now the line is good but not great. The linebackers this year have been good but not great, mostly because of injury. But what's allowed them still to be an elite run-stopping defense is that you've got Troy and Clark and the corners that can stop the run in the elite level. Now, Denver, I'm not as afraid about Denver throwing on Pittsburgh, but I'm afraid some of those runs that get 7 or 8 yards get 12 or 13 yards in this game.
I agree with you, and obviously, we got to address the situation as facing Tebow in this game, and that's the whole point of the conversation. People are talking, now the love's gone for Tebow, and everybody's saying, what's he going to do against now this defense? Because he's got the Steelers. But in all honesty, this year, and we talked about it briefly last week on the video, the thing that's been the Steelers' strong suit in years past is not their strong suit this year, and that's
when you're the number one defense, and I'm not sure. I think they're one against the pass, and certainly top 10 against the run. Watching the game, they stuff as many plays as they used to. What you end up seeing is that before, when they used to kind of break one, they'd get 4 yards. Mm-hmm. Now they get 7 or 8. And to me, it's the fact that they're getting through that defensive line a little bit more than they used to. Aaron Smith certainly wasn't strong this year, but in the last couple years was considered one of the best D linemen out there, especially for the 3-4 end. So I would agree with you that they're not as good as they were last year, but they're still let's just say this: if a team's coming in and thinking they're going to run on Pittsburgh, that I haven't seen it work yet this year.
It hasn't. Obviously, they're going to get tested this week because, that's what Denver's going to do. There's no question about it. What you said about Ryan Clark in the tackles and that, he is a great tackler. But when your safeties, and D-backs are making that many tackles stopping the run, it tells you that you do.
I disagree with that. Just because Pittsburgh as a scheme has Troy at the line and Clark up tight a lot. So, Troy is like a linebacker. It's like a fifth linebacker sometimes.
Well, Troy's everywhere. He can play.
Yeah, but he makes, for a safety, he's defending the run, especially a safety that can cover. Against the run, I think he's, 99 out of 100. Against the pass, really, he's probably 80 out of 100. He's really good against the pass, but you see him getting passed on a decent amount. Mm-hmm. But run stopping, I don't see any safety that plays like him. Now, here's my second concern. The special teams has been really good this year on coverage, and also with Brown returning, but on coverage. Mm-hmm. Now, their third and fourth round draft picks this year were D-backs, obviously young, they're rookies, and they were the gunners. And not that I'm an X's and O's guys, but the ones that have the great chance to get down there on the edge and make the tackle. Now, both of them are out for this game. One's on IR, and the other one is not on IR yet. I'm not sure but he's out for this game is my understanding. I think there's a decent chance this week or next week, assuming there is a next week, that Pittsburgh gives up a big play on special teams.
Well, being diehard Pittsburgh fans, we went through about a 3, 4, or 5 year stretch with this Pittsburgh Steeler team that every special teams play, you're like holding your breath because it seems like.
And now, I mean, we are above average this year.
No question. And you would have thought, with the rule change this year, with, moving the kicks back and everything, up, that obviously be a help, putting it in the end zone. But it hasn't, there hasn't been as many touchbacks as people thought would be this year. So this team's played well.
I don't think many people are thinking about special teams. I think they're looking at the stats and saying, hey, Pittsburgh's good at special teams. I think that some stuff has changed with the injuries. And what I'm looking at is the over in this game. And to me, one of the things that makes me not want to lay the points with Pittsburgh, but also certainly not want to play the under, is I do think, and again, it doesn't have to be a touchdown. It may be a return to the 15 or the 20, and lo and behold, a couple plays you're in the end zone. When the total's 34,
there's not a lot of room for error.
So I think that's something to look at. The third thing I think there is to look at, and it's maybe not as pertinent this game, is the Steelers do have the number one pass defense. That has been a lot about the young corners that are coming in. The Steelers always did well on first and second down on pass defense the last 5, 6, 7 years. It was when it was third and whatever, the blitz would come, and if they didn't get it, someone was wide open. And we had a ton of trouble in prevent in years past. It felt like they could walk down the field like a hot knife through butter. And this year, with Keenan Lewis stepping up, with the two starters clearly playing well on the corner, but then the two young guys that I talked about, is even when we went to dime, we were playing quite strong. Now, both the young guys are out, and Lewis is hobbled. I'm not sure if he's out or not. We're signing guys off the street right now. Now, that may not be something we have to worry about with Denver, but it is something to keep an eye on for that next game, especially if Pittsburgh goes to New England.
Well, one of the things that I can't say that I disagree with you. I'm still waiting to see a couple more things on this game where I'm going to finalize, but I'm going to make 2 points. Last week, as soon as the games were over and the pairings were set and the lines come out, following people on Twitter and just the general conversation, everybody was like, how's Denver going to score on this Pittsburgh? Because Denver all of a sudden can't score now, and we're back to, and I don't want to be somebody that said I told you so, but I told you so. Tebow's not an NFL quarterback, and he's had trouble. The thing that's been the problem the last 3 weeks, the last 3 games, they've had 9 turnovers in the last 3 games, where during the Tebow mania run, they weren't turning the ball over because they were playing teams that either didn't have a powerful defense or didn't have a powerful offense that they had to get into that they had to open their offense. So
let's get this straight now. So the turnovers are driven by the opponent.
Well, the turnovers that you're giving up are driven by the turnover, but it's the game.
I'm not following you.
If you're playing a game where nobody's scoring, okay, and which so many of those Denver games were when they pulled it out in the fourth quarter, it was a one-possession game. Exactly. You're not opening the offense up to have to come from behind. So when you're not opening the offense up, you're not taking chances. When you're not taking chances, you're not turning the ball over.
Okay, so that's a different conversation. What you're saying is when the game was able to be managed and it wasn't out of hand, then Denver didn't have to take chances and Tebow could play within himself, had less turnovers. Once you have 1 or 2 turnovers, now you're down 14, now you've got to open up and it opens the floodgates for the third or fourth. That's very different than saying, well, they didn't play any good defenses and now the good defenses are coming like the Bills and snapping the ball away. That's just what all
Bills,
happened.
they got behind and he's forcing the issue. And any team, if they're coming at you, you're going to, and that's one thing where I'm getting on this long-winded thing, is this benefits you with your over, because the Steelers are a ball hawking type defense, and if Troy picks, you've got a good shot. You talk about a touchdown on special teams. You got a real good shot of a touchdown on defense from the Steelers with a pick 6.
Yeah. See, I question, to me, and this is something that I figured would happen and I was afraid would happen, is not afraid necessarily, but for Tebow's sake, is every quarterback has bad games, or even a series of a couple bad games, and especially if you're a first-year starter. is Andy Dalton has played some games just as bad as Tebow, but Dalton is a young guy. He's the Red Rocket or whatever the heck he is, and he's on his way. And it's back to that theory is we all really embrace what it is that affirms our initial opinion. Your initial opinion was that Denver or that Tebow is not an NFL quarterback. You see a couple of games, and I'll tell you right now, and I'll say it 100 times, Tebow, if you look at that New England game, is, I mean, certainly fun. If you're going to fumble, you're not going to be an NFL quarterback. But when I watch that New England game, or I watched it, it's not a game that I came away thinking Tebow was better than I did entering that game. And I think we talked about that.
Did.
So now there's been 2 games since, right? The Bills, and then clearly not a good game against KC. Now, is this statement of "I told you so" driven off of 2 games?
No, what it's driven, and if we go back and watch all of our Denver videos, all the games I talked about where the value was in the games, and the games that I actually made plays on involving Tebow.
I'm not talking about the value in the Broncos. I'm saying Tebow as a quarterback is to look at him and say he's not an NFL quarterback now. I don't understand where that's coming from.
I still say he's not an NFL level quarterback, but I will say
except he can take a team that's like 2-6 and get them in the playoffs. I mean, even with the ending that they had, they were, what was the record at the end? Because he started 1-1. They won 5 games in a row, right?
And they lost the final 3.
And they lost the final 3. So you got 6-1, 6-4. So to me, a 60% NFL quarterback who's a rookie on a team who was, had a really poor record prior to him coming on. What were the odds that when Tebow took the first snap, what were the odds that Denver was going to make the playoffs?
Oh, they were gazillion to 1 probably.
Oh, well, yeah, long shot. Okay. They made the playoffs. When the fact he played 2 bad games, we're now going to say we know he's not a good quarterback, but when he played 2 good games, that didn't matter.
But he's played more than 2 bad games. They managed to win games in spite of him. We've had that conversation numerous times. You got to look at the level of the competition of who he played to during those games and the AFC West in general. When the division is made up of the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Diego Chargers, and the Oakland Raiders, it's not a powerhouse division to win. So, probably and they kept him as a coach. The best team at the end of the season in that division didn't make the playoffs, and that was San Diego.
What I would caution is, again, I do think there's a phenomenon with everyone to clearly affirm what they think, to affirm activities or things they view that affirms what they believe. And number 2, we all overreact, even when you try not to what you've seen most recently. Right. So what I want to stress is, if the handicap in this game is Tebow's horrible, I'm not sure that's appropriate.
It's not. But again, I talk about value and all of this. I'm getting to the point that in the last 3 weeks, whenever I said take teasers against them, bet against them because of the line value and where it was at, I was right on. I'm going to tell you right now, that has swung the other way. The value actually is lining up on Denver in this game because all of those pundits that were quick to say things like I said, but I said it looking at on a game-by-game basis in who the type of team they're playing. This line is overinflated. I really do think that we're getting into a point where, public perception that was so for Tebow in the last month is now so anti-Tebow that the pendulum has swung the other way, and the value now is back on Denver.
Perhaps. What do you look at with Big Ben and his ankle? Where do you see him at right now?
I think he is still at only 85% at best. It's taking away his mobility, and I think that that's one of Ben's strongest suits. We've talked about it on video numerous times. I think Ben is one of those rare quarterbacks that's better on the move when, a play's breaking down and he scrambles.
I wonder, now here's the thing. So clearly he didn't have his mobility against San Fran.
Right.
Then he sat out against the Rams. Then he played against the Browns. To me, my sense was he wasn't pushing himself in that Browns game. I had to watch it on the computer, so I didn't see the biggest screen.
Yeah. I'll admit I didn't get to see the game, and I'm hoping to maybe catch a rerun on NFL.
So I think right now, assuming that's true, and I'm not 100% certain, I wonder where he is at. Because I think it's one of those things, like if you're playing a little kid in basketball, you've got a sprained ankle, you don't start jumping real high until you have to, right? You try to win without having to jump. Right. My sense is Pittsburgh was in control of that entire game, and he really didn't have to jump. Now with another week of rest, I'm not so sure that. And again, he was saying 60-65, which I'll take 85. But I'm not. What I'm saying is, I think the perception is he's more hobbled or limited than maybe he is.
Now, losing Mendenhall, your big back. Now, there's been a couple games that Mendenhall didn't play, and the Steelers have performed well without him. But they're going to, with the combination of Ben being hobbled, your star running back being out, Denver's game plan.
Well, that's the thing. That offers value, though. If what you're saying is your star running back's out, but the drop-off is minuscule, then that equals value, right? What concerns me, I'll take the trade any day of the week, especially for a game or two. I do think Mendenhall offers that opportunity for the 45-yard run that Redmond doesn't. We play one giving, but the thing is Mendenhall only breaks 4 of those a year, but those are always an option, and the assumption is we're going to have to win 4 games to win the Super Bowl. He would have probably broken one 45-yard run if we would have won 4 games of the Super Bowl. I don't think Redmond can do that. From 15 yards and in, I think Redmond's a better back, or at least as good of a back. What bothers me is their third string back Moore has missed like 3 or 4 straight weeks. I'm not sure what his status is for this game, but he's either going to miss it or be hobbled. Now you've got Clay, who literally hadn't taken a snap until 2 weeks ago. So it doesn't bother me so much Redmond, but it bothers me that we don't, Dreyer is hurt from earlier in the year, the third back. So we're really down to 5th and 6th backs now in the second position if Moore's not feeling right, which I think that's problematic.
Yeah. Now, it was only one game, but the Steeler coaching staff was very pleased with Clay in the game.
And that's what they're going to do. They got this guy's their second back right now. They've got to exalt him. It's hard for me to watch. I'm not a coach. I can't watch and say, yeah, that guy's just as good. But he was on the practice squad for a reason.
Now, one thing that I'll say, and everybody, like I said, again, I like whenever, immediately after that game, the tweets, how's Denver going to score any points on this Pittsburgh defense and this and that. Remember last year, and we talked about it on an earlier video today, I did with Steven Nova when we were talking about New Orleans. Seattle Seahawks made the playoffs last year. They were like the laughing stock of the NFL to even make the playoffs. And New Orleans went in there, and they were the defending Super Bowl champs. They laid an egg on the road, laying points. I know Pittsburgh's a better team. That's a given. I know they've got a great defense. But there's just a mystique of these home underdogs in the playoffs. It doesn't happen that often. And to be this big, you cannot just think you can show up and you're going to win this game.
Yeah, but who's to say that's what they're going to do? So, all right, so here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give a strong pick on the over. And if I had to lean, I'd lay 6.5. I'd take 7.5. So clearly I'm leaning dog. But that's a lean right now, and I don't see any real correlated parlay here. I think very well, if Pittsburgh does get out and about, I think Tebow could score 14 in the fourth too. Pittsburgh could be up 21-6, and then Tebow scores 2 touchdowns in the fourth, and Pittsburgh gets a field goal.
That's the best scenario. That would be the perfect world, because I think it works both ways for you. If Pittsburgh has that big lead, Tebow, as we know, like you said, gets those garbage time scores. But on the flip side, if Pittsburgh comes with that, defense and they get a strip or something, or the pick six, helps you that way as well. You don't want to see one of those games where Tebow's hanging around, because then the scores, then the pace of the game.
Methodical.
Yeah.
And for those who are new listeners or viewers, Marco is a Pittsburgh expert, both pro and college. both football, basketball, and baseball. What's your Pittsburgh record?
24-10 last 2 years. That's both college and pro football with Pittsburgh teams.
And I know you aren't finalized yet, but you have a strong opinion on the Pitt Panther game coming up.
There's a big game Saturday, a big game Sunday in the bowl, or Monday in the bowls. I'm going to have a triple dime play on both games, and one of those games is the Pitt
And the
game.
thing is, you bet against Pitt or any Pittsburgh team as much as you play on them. You're not a homer.
I mean, that can't be more evident than whenever I flew all the way to San Francisco to watch the Steelers on Monday Night Football and then had a big play on the 49ers.
All right, guys, you can check everything out with Marco at marcodangelo.com. And remember, all of our videos each week are in a super thread in the forums, and you can see all the videos from all the different participants, and you can actually see the notes, the show notes from all the participants, and you can ask any questions that you have, and we're all in there to answer any questions, so we continue the conversation. You can go there directly at pregamevideos.com. Talk to you there.